So, last week's video certainly got a few people up in arms now, didn't it? How dare you criticize my band, Glenn? I'm telling Mom! Well, truth can be hard to hear. But if you don't hear it, you're going to be very, very disappointed when your delusions dry up and you're faced with reality. And yes, I would like fries with that. Look, I don't say stuff because I want to be mean. Well, mostly anyway. But because I want you guys to be smart about how you handle your business. And yes, your band is absolutely your business. Even if you're in it just for the fun or playing music for the sake of it, your end goal should still be to be the best that you can be. And believe it or not, I am here to help. Here's 13 things that your band could do to actually have a shot at making it. Number 1, plan your finances. We as musicians all suffer from gas. And no, I am not talking about your drummer's only musical talent, which is flatulence. I'm talking about gear acquisition syndrome. It's that urge we all get to buy the latest and greatest piece of gear we just saw 15 whole minutes ago. And to be honest, gear isn't even the biggest problem here. At least you can put a guitar to good use. You can't do that with weed or booze. When you're in a band, there are certain costs that come associated with it. Renting a rehearsal space, driving to practice, paying for lessons, or paying a studio to record and mix your songs. These things cost money. A lot of this stuff comes down to communication among the bandmates. Find out how much stuff this costs beforehand, and then figure out how you're going to all pay for it. If someone can't afford something that month, you can cover for him. But if he doesn't pay up the next time, or he makes stupid excuses as to why he can't afford it, then throw his sorry ass out! And don't expect the 1 or 2 guys in the band who actually have jobs just to pay for everything. You're in a group and you all have to chip in to keep the band going. Otherwise, the guys who do pay their share are just gonna start resenting the rest of you lazy fucks who spend their money on tattoos and OnlyFans. Number 2, write songs together. Now, you guys have heard me talk about the shortcomings of modern metal ad nauseum, but the biggest problem is that all the songs aren't being made by the band as a whole. It's usually the megalomaniac lead guitar player that programs the drums, writes the lyrics, and then spends 20 minutes mindlessly noodling all over it. Be very clear about this. Nobody but the other guitar players give a fuck. And even then, that statement's pretty fucking generous. Bands used to come together in a shitty garage and then just jam out. There was passion there that the modern metal scene is sorely lacking. So instead of being doormats for the self-important prima donna on the 7-string, get together and present ideas to each other. And to all the guitar players out there, please stop being such a fucking control freak and don't be afraid of suggestions. Yes, we know you're all better than the rest of us, but if your drummer says he's got a cool idea for a fill, don't just brush it off. Hear the guy out, maybe try it out. This all comes down to communication. Number 3, don't dwell on the gear. Musicians love their gear, maybe even a bit too much. And that's completely normal. We all love our shiny toys. But it's important to stop and realize that great music doesn't come from gear, but from artistic expression. Now, I want you all to understand this very simple truth. Absolutely no one cares about your gear you use to play and record your music. Well, maybe the other guitarists, but your audience and the general population does not give a flying fuck. When you're up on stage and you're rocking out, guess what, dumbass? The people you're playing to are looking at you, not at your fucking amp. And even if they are, it's because it's sitting on top of your cab where the sound is coming from, like this thing right here. Oh, and if people come to talk to you after the show, what do you think they're gonna say? Hey man, that show was awesome. Your amp and guitar are the coolest. I wish I had that exact same setup. Or, hey man, that show was awesome. You guys fucking rocked. Which scenario do you think is more likely? Number 4, promote yourselves. Newsflash, if you want people to listen to your music, they have to know you exist first! I've never understood this mentality. Guys record some songs at home, they post it up on YouTube, and then complain when nobody is giving them the time of day. Of course, the same guys didn't even bother to share their own fucking song on Facebook! Once upon a time, when record labels had a monopoly on music distribution, they also carried the responsibility of promoting their artists. How else were they going to make their millions? Nowadays, most people promote themselves, and really all it takes is a little imagination. For starters, play play live shows. I know that the whole COVID fiasco has made it just a bit more difficult, but with people actually getting vaccinated, venues are starting to open up, and you can bet that they are looking for acts to book. Now, don't think I'm just pulling the you get better by playing live thing out of my ass. The Beatles played their asses off in order to get where they were. Seriously, look at this list of live shows. These guys played every single day. Now, if you're playing 2 gigs a year and still whining that you're not seeing any success, go find the nearest mirror, realize that you're looking at exactly what's holding you back, and slap yourself. Playing live shows isn't everything, of course. There are many other ways you can reach a wider audience as well. Start a YouTube channel or a TikTok account. Post frequently, have creative and engaging videos, and believe me, if you're any good, people will find you. It's how Jared Dines and Fluff's old band Rest Repose was able to crack the top 10 on iTunes a few years back. A worldwide audience is accessible to everybody. All you have to do is be entertaining. Number 5, release independently. Now that you understand some basics of promoting yourselves, it's time to think about releasing your music. And I don't mean just putting your low bitrate MP3s up on YouTube. I'm talking about putting your music up on all the major streaming services. And me anyway, there's no better tool to do that than DistroKid. And for the record, this video is not sponsored. I just like the service that they offer. Word to the wise, just make sure to fill out your tax treaty forms correctly if you're not from the US. That way they don't have to hold on to 30% of your income. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, talk to an accountant. Oh, and unlike the cancerous colon of the music industry's CD baby, they won't claim your stream midway while it's fucking happening. That actually happened to me last Monday during the live mix reviews. A band posted their song for a review, and like the glue-eating morons that they are, they released it through CD Baby, the most predatory and overrated online music publisher on the fucking planet. Seriously, if you're gonna release music yourself, don't give those greedy bastards any of your money. You'll be doing yourselves a favor. Number 6, prioritize your band. Don't you guys just hate it when you all agree to have band practice at 5 p.m. and the bass player shows up at 6:30 because he had things to do? Look, making it as a band is tough, and people who aren't committed are only going to weigh you down. It's important that you're all on the same page and you stand by your word. If you agreed to spend a few days together as a band, don't be the guy that has to jump out for a few hours because his girlfriend started bitching at you. You signed up for this, and if you want people to respect you, you have to see these things through. Unless you crashed your car or you got stabbed in a Wendy's parking lot, keep your word and don't skip out on your band. You agreed to do this, and nothing worth doing is ever gonna be easy. Number 7, refine your act. Now, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. Actually, I've never sugarcoated things. But when you're just starting out in this band, you're probably gonna suck harder than Sasha Grey. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all need time to be terrible before we can be great. And yes, lead guitar players, I mean you. And doing something a lot can only make you better at it. Again, referencing the Beatles and how much they played their asses off when they were starting out. Keep this in mind. Your live shows aren't just about you playing your songs. It's about interacting with the audience, creating a mood, and being fucking entertaining. Nobody is expecting you to be amazing at your first gig, but eventually you're gonna have to make improvements. That is where refining your act comes in. For starters, tape your shows and then watch them together. That way you can learn what your audience loved the most and you can do that more. You can also learn what they hated and you can stop doing that. It can also help you create your own set. Having lights and props on stage can certainly add to your band's uniqueness. And believe me, it's far more interesting than you guys just headbanging and staring at your fretboards. Number 8, get your own sound. This is a message that I've been preaching since the beginning of this channel. I'm sick and tired of every metal band sounding the same. I mean, come on, guys, we've been dealing with the 5150 Vintage 30 SM57 combo for 2 fucking decades now. Isn't it time to do what all living things do? You know, evolve. If you really want to get your own sound, you can start by not using the same gear as every other metal band out there. Hell, just look through some of my videos. I've reviewed a crap ton of great and affordable gear like amps and mics, and recently I even discovered that amazing new EVH and hemp back blend. That particular sound is so refreshing, it's kind of led me down the whole guitar speaker rabbit hole. I actually bought some older Celestion T75s since there's a lot of talk about them on my SMG Discord as of late. Stay tuned for that video. The point is to keep experimenting and find sounds that people might not have heard yet. And just remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just pays to develop something fresh and unique. Oh, and speaking of perfect, number 9, turn off Autotune. Ah, yes, the absolute worst of the cliches that plague modern music. Autotune. It's bad enough that it helps attractive people with no real talent become millionaire superstars, but it's also infested the world of metal since the freaking MySpace era. Now, some smartass is bound to say, but you can't prove Autotune is inherently bad. Okay, let me stop you right there, dickface. For starters, people could sing just fine before Autotune was invented. Why should now be any different? Laziness and ego are not a good excuse for not taking singing lessons. Second of all, very few, and I mean very few people can actually pull off perfect pitch. And even then, it's not Autotune perfect. The human voice just doesn't sound like that. It's unnatural and it's grating on my fucking ears. Hell, the only reason it's accepted nowadays is because people are born into a world where Autotune is on every single piece of shit excuse for a song. They've grown up thinking that mediocrity is the norm, so is it any wonder that they themselves aspire to be mediocre? And last but not least, this is metal, for fuck's sakes! You know, that loud and angry genre that used to piss off prudish religious zealots? Metal used to have balls, it had attitude, and it was proud of the fact that it wasn't perfect. Today, people just don't release a song if one little note isn't perfectly in key. Now, if you want to separate yourself from the hundreds of faceless and talentless bands out there, just turn off the Autotune and learn to sing with some fucking passion. Number 10, turn off the drum samples. Cliche number 2, and it sure smells like it as well. Same thing applies here. If you want to stand out and have your own sound, stop sample replacing everything! And especially stop using the same samples that everybody else uses. I've heard Slate Kick 5 so many times now it practically turns into white noise whenever I hear it. Do you know how hard it is to find a fucking song these days where the drums haven't been outright replaced by samples? Once upon a time, we actually had drummers on records. Imagine that. Now look, I've certainly changed my mind on samples quite a bit over the past year. I found out that some of my records had a very small blend of drum samples on them, and that's perfectly fine. If it's done tastefully and it doesn't kill the vibe of the real drummer, go for it. That's the trick though, you have to exercise a little bit of judgment and taste. Because if you're actively 100 replacing every single hit of the drums, you're not doing the music any favors. Especially if you're just 127ing everything. That's where the hit velocity is turned all the way up and it makes every hit sound the same, so there's no nuance to the sound. It's just all loud all the time, even when it doesn't need to be. Here's a weird, strange, and radical idea. Leave the fucking dynamics in! And if you want to learn how to program drums better with the finesse and timing of a real drummer, head on over to Spectre Digital and check out Henning Pauly's course on the matter. Number 11, record live off the floor. Nothing grinds my gears like overly sanitized recordings. I mean, come the fuck on. The whole point of music is that it's not perfect. Perfection is boring. And this isn't just the musician's fault. Engineers have also played a gigantic role in this problem. They'll endlessly edit out every little mistake of a performance, leaving it completely sterile and lifeless. It's one thing to have something completely unusable, but when you go so far that you edit the noise out of sliding guitar strings, you're not helping the fucking music! Now, I get that you have to compete with what's out there, but allow me to present something so rare in metal these days. Instead of tracking every instrument separately, and instead of doing punch-ins at every possible section, record your band live off the floor. When you're playing together, you're introducing an element of chaos into the performance, and it's that aspect that gives the music some much needed humanity. Hell, you don't even have to do it all at the same time. You can have the guitarist and bassist DI their tracks through amp sims and record the vocalist at the same time. You can always reamp those DIs later and track the drums on top of that. It might not give you that polished sound you think you want, but it'll definitely give your song some attitude and character. Number 12, don't timeline everything. It doesn't matter if you're recording live off the floor or you're doing instruments separately, whatever your approach is, please don't fucking timeline everything! Fuck! I know, same thing. You have to compete with what's out there. But allow me once again to offer a different perspective because I'm actually capable of thinking for myself. People aren't perfect, and neither is the music that they make. Even the best musicians on earth can't play perfectly to a metronome, and that's perfectly fine. It's what gives the song its groove. It's what gives it some human charm. It's what makes music interesting. Now, if your engineer insists on fixing your mistakes, put your foot down and say, "No, leave it the fuck alone, asshole!" Modern engineers are greatly responsible for why metal is so fucking boring nowadays. And I get it, making money recording bands is tough, and when a band puts something out, the engineer wants to make sure the other bands that hear your song will want to come to him as well. I've had this happen to me before. I recorded a band and they took the tracks to be mixed by another studio, and what did he do? He time-aligned everything and replaced everything with samples. It's like, dude, if they wanted that sound, they would record the whole fucking thing with you to begin with. If you really value your band and you want to develop your own sound, don't snap everything to the fucking grid. Learn to think for yourselves. Don't be afraid to sound like yourself. Number 13, learn to accept criticism. Now this one goes out to all the butthurt idiots from last week's video. Seriously, some of the comments I got on that video were just fucking absurd.
Of course there's going to be more iconic riffs with standard tuning. It's been out longer. There are lots of amazing bands that use low tuning and their engineers do just fine.
I noticed he didn't actually name off any iconic 8-string riffs.
13 reasons why boomers don't find bands that worth it.
I'm sorry, Boris, I was too busy falling asleep.
This is Glenn talking to himself.
The list goes on and on. Oh, I am so fucking sorry that I stepped on your delicate little toes. But seeing as just how some pissed off people got, I'm gonna assume that my points hit just a little bit too close to home. Look guys, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there is this thing called satire. What can I say? I want my videos to be both informative and funny. If I wanted to bore you guys to death, I'd shave my head and talk with a bad German accent. So what's the point? The point is that learning to accept criticism is a big part of refining your band as a whole. You're always gonna have your detractors. You're always going to have haters, and not everyone is gonna like your shit. That's just how it is. You certainly can't please everyone. And the more you whine and bitch about people not liking what you do, the more your potential listeners are not going to want to associate with you. Nobody likes a crybaby. So when you hear me say something like, "I don't like how autotune is used on your vocals," or "your drums are faker than a stripper's tits," or "there's nothing original about this, you sound like every other band out there," it's not because I want you to fail, but it's because I want you to do better. We could endlessly debate on the musical issues of modern metal, but really, that deserves a video of its own. Getting pissed off at somebody for daring to suggest you're not perfect isn't exactly the healthiest state of mind to be in. So the next time I piss you off, do this for me. Calm down, take a very deep breath and drink a Dr. Pepper, and then decide if you still want to type your incoherent all caps comments. You whiny fucking suckhole. Oh. No, I gotta do that again. Can we have a fuck flyby there? That would be great. Cliche number 2 and a schmer. Hope I got a voice left by the end of this.